Drill. We're out on Twitter. So Frank, 3, 2, 1.
Have you ever heard a Christian say, we ought not be involved in politics? When I hear people say that, I go to my iPhone and I pull up one image. Here is the image. Check this out. It's coming. Hang on. We're live. What is this image? This obviously is a satellite image of the Korean Peninsula. As you can see, South Korea is filled with productivity. It's filled with the gospel. It's filled with productivity and light. North Korea, on the other hand, bring that back up, Jorge, for a second. North Korea, on the other hand, is a concentration camp. There's not much going on up there. Ladies and gentlemen, there is one reason, one primary reason for the difference between South and North Korea. And that reason is politics. South Korea has freedom. North Korea does not. And if you don't think politics are important, then you don't think it's better to live in South Korea than North Korea, because politics affects how people live. And if you don't think so, go to some of the countries I've been. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've been to China. I've been to Iran. You know, you can't do what we're doing on this live stream right now in those countries. Why not? Because politically they've ruled it out. And if we allow our freedoms to be taken over or to be taken away, we won't even be able to live the gospel or preach the gospel. So Christians, if for no other reason we ought to be involved in politics, is we have to protect our freedoms to preach and live the gospel. And there's a young man who's come on the scene in recent years who is doing this on the college campus. He is protecting religious and political freedom through his organization called Turning Point USA. And that young man's name is Charlie Kirk, and he's my guest here today. Let's bring Charlie on. He's coming all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. Charlie, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Frank, it is such an honor to be with you. We'll talk about this throughout this broadcast, but you're a hero of mine, and you have brought me closer to Jesus and closer to God, and have given me such clarity on pressing issues. And your audience should know the impact that not just you're having with the amount of people, but also impacting the people that other people look to. And I just want to thank you for that. You're doing unbelievable work at Cross Exam. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thanks, brother. Well, it's actually an honor to have you on, because I've been following your work for a while now, and you are on college campuses mixing it up with people that literally want to shut you down. I mean, Charlie, it's impressive your poise in front of these young people who are literally cursing you out and trying to shut you down. You're just trying to bring reason and wisdom and Jesus and conservative principles to the college campus, and they come after you, Charlie. It's impressive what you're doing. Before we get into this, I do want to ask you, before we talk about Turning Point USA and the work you're doing on college campuses, I've got to ask you, how did you become a Christian?
So I grew up in a Christian household in a Presbyterian church. I went to a Christian academy, Christian 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, right out in Chicago, right near Norfolk, Illinois. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior in 5th grade. I didn't understand the enormity of it, but I did understand it the best I could at that age. And I'm sure you hear a lot of stories like I did my best to follow the Lord throughout public middle school and public high school. As I got older, my salvation became more and more, not just important, that's not the right word, but it became more clear what it actually meant. When I started to see how broken human beings are, I started to see that you really are not, you have to surrender so much to God, and we are all in need of a Savior. It really kind of came into a collision point in the summer of 2017. You played a role in this, Frank, where, believe it or not, growing up in the Christian Heritage Academy, going to Harvest Bible Chapel in the suburbs of Chicago, a church I'm sure that you're familiar with, rarely ever come in contact with what I felt to be a more rational argument for the authenticity of the Bible, and a historical and archaeological argument for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And it was in a hotel room in Los Angeles when I was doing my traveling at Turning Point USA, when I was flipping through those movies, I came across The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. I saw the movie, I was so moved by it, and I said, why have I never heard these arguments before? And so then I bought the book Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, read it in 3 days, and I read it again, and then I went on a deep dive about YouTube. I said, there's got to be more people that think like this. That's where I came in contact with your videos. And I was so compelled because at that moment, Frank, there was the intersection of what I felt as being reborn as a follower of Jesus Christ, where I felt spiritually and physically reborn. But then the intersection of the hyper-rational side of me, which is what has always driven me, the analytical side of, wow, I know that, Jesus Christ presented himself to 500 people that we know of resurrection. I'd never heard about Josephus. I'd never heard about the independent, non-biblical sources that reaffirm the authenticity of the gospel. And at that moment, I went from a 6 out of 10 on fire for Jesus to the highest you could possibly be, right? And and I think, Frank, that's a really important lesson, because that I grew up in not directly Christendom, but within the realm of a good Bible-believing church and a Christian Heritage Academy for 3 years, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And I had not heard, or at least I had not internalized, let's put it that way. I probably heard it, but I just wasn't as aware. The argument that you make so well and so effectively, and you say that Christians are not always talked into Christianity, or people are not always talking to Christianity. That's why they're talked out of it. And I was stunned at how much evidence there was for the Bible that I wasn't. And so that's how I became a Christian. I'm a proud Christian. I talk about it a lot. I get plenty of blowback and flack for it. That's all part of it. That's the price of admission for the game that we're playing.
Well, people are wondering, wow, this is very articulate. You're 26 years old. You started Turning Point USA when you were, what, 18? How old were you?
18. Yeah, so I took a very road less traveled, unusual journey to this whole enterprise, you could say, or this journey. I wanted to go to a specific school in high school. I didn't get into it. Ended up being the best thing that never happened to me, and I ended up not going to college. And I started this organization with no money, no connections, and no idea what I was doing. But I did believe politically that the country was going dramatically in the wrong direction, embracing the ideas of leftism and Marxism, really betraying the foundational ideas of the Enlightenment, of individual liberty, of natural rights, of God-centric governance instead of a state-centric governance. And I embarked on this journey, and it's been unbelievable. God has blessed us so much. At Turning Point USA, I am a Christian, as I just articulated, but the foundational principles of Turning Point USA are American exceptionalism, constitutional liberty, and free enterprise. We are not necessarily, we are not an organization that is theologically, in the sense that its most Christian ministries are. If you look at our leadership, we are run by Christians. We actually do have lots of evidence, Frank, kind of the Galatians 3 model of people coming to Christ through us talking about principles that make sense. And then people want to see the law as a school teacher of Jesus Christ. But some would say that we are a secular organization. That is probably a true description, in the sense that mission statement are ideas and principles that are in the secular realm. And there's nothing necessarily wrong about that, as long as the Christians themselves also are talking about their testimony and their witness whenever presented and given the opportunity to do so.
Well, you do that. And at the Turning Point USA website, mission laid out there, Charlie, and three things you mentioned specifically: political freedom, free markets, and limited government. Let's just go through those real quickly. Why should Christians be concerned about political freedom?
And you said it best right out of the gate. One of the things that I'm project that I'm so honored to be working with as well at Liberty University with Jerry Falwell Jr., the Falkirk Center for Faith and Liberty, is quite honestly, the more I got into this movement, the more disappointed I was, Frank, with how certain Christians would just consider politics not important, or they considered politics completely disconnected from the gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't view it that way. In fact, I believe that there are principles that are so necessary to fight for, that if you ask yourself the question, how are you able to talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ without the threat of being thrown into a political prison right now? Well, it's because we have foundational ideas that are enshrined into the United States Constitution that, by the way, has a blueprint for every flourishing republic across the world since the founding of our country. You beautifully articulated the actual geographic representation of North Korea and South Korea. In South Korea, the gospel's on fire. Christians are being saved every single day. North Korea is the most hostile country of Christianity in the entire world. China is right there behind it. And so if Christians think, well, politics is messy, I don't want to get involved in it. Well, first of all, that's a really bad excuse as a Christian not to get involved in it, because the whole world is messy. If you believe in original sin, there's no industry you'll be able to find that is totally pristine. And so absolutely is messy, but so is athletics, so is Hollywood, so is pop, all of it is messy. Banking, finance,
yeah, sure.
Nothing that you'll be able to, churches are messy because dealing with flawed human beings that are fallen by our nature. And we'll get into that in a second, because I think that's a really important thing that we don't talk about as Christians, which is we have a book, we have a blueprint that shows us exactly how human beings are by their creation, and the left rejects that. Actually, they actually think that totally different. I do want to get into that, but without belaboring the point too much, Frank, we as Christians believe that, and for the reason that God cares about how we marry, who we marry, how we act, whether we lie, all those things, and we do. I also have an argument that your vote is also an expression of values and salvation. I'm not saying on this podcast that the Republican is always the right thing or the Democrat is always the wrong thing. I can make the argument generally it does trend in one direction. However, if you think disconnect yourself as a Christian from the civic expression of testimony, I think that there's something fundamentally missing, especially when we do have the war of Christianity happening around the world, where you have Christians being persecuted and locked up for their beliefs. And here in the country, here in the States, you have a population of people that want to shut down churches, that have been shutting down churches, that want to get behind, essentially persecute pastors for their deep religious beliefs. So anyway, that's a somewhat of a short answer to a very, very important question.
Charlie, you've got these clubs, or what do you call them? What do you call them on campuses? Chapters. Yeah. I'm sorry, chapters. These chapters all over the college campus that are trying to teach people that political freedom is important. And Abraham Lincoln said it best. He said, the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of the government in the next. So you are taking a proactive approach on college campuses where leftism reigns to try and bring young people together around these principles. One, as you just mentioned, is political freedom. Another is free markets. And the third is limited government. Now, why are free markets important to our country? Why is that a thing that we ought to be advocating?
Thank you, Frank, for mentioning that, because we as Christians don't talk about the ownership of